Well, here I am on Let's Talk Theater with my good friend and now director, one-on-one, just us, Joe Bishara. He and I are working on Diary of a Recovering Daughters. And we just want to take this opportunity to just talk candidly, because another one of my friends, the Woods, suggested that I interview myself. I was like, okay, how do I do that? So what I decided to do was, Joe and I would ask each other questions, and then I had some of you on Facebook ask questions, and so we will try to answer the questions that are on Facebook and just the questions that we have for each other, and hope that it gives you just a little glimpse, a little one, into Diary of Recovering Daughters. So I'm going to start first with asking Joe a question.
Oh boy.
That's what I'm going to start with. So, Joe, you have been very, very, how do I say this, active in helping produce and present original works by playwrights who have decided to do one-woman or one-man shows, either about their lives or about something that has affected their lives. And first off, I want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
Because, it's been a lost art with that piece of the one woman and one man show of one person telling a story. So I commend you on doing that. Tell us, because you've worked with several people, what's been the most difficult thing working with this playwright and the actor?
Got it. As a playwright, this particular playwright has been extremely gracious, okay? I have thoroughly enjoyed working with you, Julie, because you understand something that I think it takes artists time to understand, is that none of us are an island, and that the art will only be better if we allow ourselves to focus on making the art better and not being so concerned about being right as an individual. And that's the part that I've really been pleasantly surprised by, is that the artists that I'm working with on the playwright side of things have been willing to listen to my constructive criticism or my feedback, because I read your piece and then I see it happening. And when I see it happening, I'm hearing it happening as well. And so sometimes there's a back and forth between me and the playwright in the editing process, or even at the beginnings of the rehearsal process. And then I say, hey, you know what? I know we talked about this back and forth in email prior to rehearsal, but now I'm hearing it out loud and I'm seeing it in real time. I think we might need to modify this, all for clarity for the audience. And so I've really enjoyed working with you in that regard, Julie. As a performer, you've also been extremely gracious as well. I've been really impressed by how well you have been able to let go and just allow me to do my thing, even though you have lived with this piece for a number of years. It's a major part of the fabric of your life. And so I really appreciate your willingness to trust. And that's really, I think, the most important component when it's the writer/performer working with a director, is that trust component. Knowing that I am focused on putting you in the best possible position to succeed. We've only had a couple times where I've had to say, thank you, actor. But you've just been a joy to work with, and I'm so excited to share this piece with audiences.
Okay, Joe. Now's your turn.
Oh boy.
To ask me a question.
Sure. So, Julie, like I said, I'm honored to be working on this piece with you. and I've admired your work and you as a human being for years. But I've also talked to you for years about how much I've wanted to work with you. And so I guess my question to you is why all of a sudden was this the right time? Was this the right place? What made you go, you know what? I'm gonna do this with Joe. What made you feel like this was in your gut, that this was the right thing to do?
I think for me, Joe, it was the fact that, number one, you're correct. For years, Joe was like, Julie, I want to work with you. And I'm going to be honest. I was like, yeah, sure. You hear a lot of people always say they want to help you. And I've had experiences where people have said they want to work with me and they want to help me. And, and they want to help me, push the Black Theater Festival, or Mind for God Productions. And then, when I would give them the opportunity to do so, they let me down. They either said they were going to do something, but when it came time for the deadlines, because I'm a deadline person, they wouldn't have what I asked for. A lot of times I end up having to do it myself. And so it put me in a position where I started thinking, look, the only way that you're going to be able to get your work out the way you want it is you have to do it. And so that's why for years, you would always at these things be like, hey, and I would be like, yeah. But after, we worked together on the Black Theater Festival, and I was so honored that you was able to. Because see, one thing with the COVID, it stopped us from doing other things, but it also opened up avenues for those of us that couldn't work together, that wanted to really work together, because we was always doing other things.
Right.
In our own projects, that we could, either my project was going on the same as yours, or you was directing something when I was directing something, or I needed something. So it was hard. But because of what happened with COVID and theaters, just being shut down and everything, you had an opportunity, and you was making a change in where you were going. You had an opportunity to actually help. And so when I asked you, I was like, well, we'll see. I'm going to ask him to direct for the Black Theater Festival. And you did. And when I saw that, hey, he really means this, that he really is wants to help push and support what I'm trying to do, which is to share stories about marginalized people, especially my Black people. And that's why I trusted you. So we start talking last year? Actually, we started talking around, March. Well, that's when we started the Black Theater Festival.
Right.
And started talking about it. And so it just put that, I think I'm going to do that. And then when I saw what you were doing, with the other, I was like, wow. I have a piece that would fit perfectly with what you was trying to do, which was Diary of Recovering Daughters. And which is going, my plans is to make that to a full stage production with, actors. But I wrote it with the intent of the counselor telling the story. So you gave me that opportunity, and that's why. Because you pursued and said, I would like to work with you. Second, when I gave you an opportunity to do so, you did it and you followed through with it all the way through. And third, you had already was starting out there doing something other people weren't doing, which was pushing the one woman and the man and the original stories. So I'm honored, that you're my director. I wanted somebody, I wanted a male, I wanted a minority director, I wanted the, oops, y'all didn't know that, did y'all? Mm-hmm. And then I wanted, and I wanted a father. He had to be a father that was going to direct me, and all of those things, so that he would understand, could be able to understand the daughters.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's huge, right? I think that in
Keep talking.
I think that in this time of pandemic, at least for me, I've learned that people need to slow down, right? Because you've had to. For me, it's caused me to, in a good way, take some time for reflection. And I think that, I'm not saying that, I don't want to do broad brushstrokes here, but in general, Julie, I think that we don't often take time to go when we're having a disconnect with someone, to go say something as simple as, that's someone's son, that's someone's daughter. And maybe you need to take a step back and try to see things from their unique perspective. I definitely see the world differently, now that I have 2 daughters of my own. And I sometimes look back at some things I did in the past and go, wow, I'm glad I've been blessed with this opportunity to have daughters, so I can see the world through their lens. And that's actually what helped inspire so much of what I'm doing right now on this stage, is that I feel like I'm trying to guide my children. And I want to make sure that if I'm guiding them, I'm showing them that everyone's life experience is drastically different, based on how they were raised, based on the color of their skin. The way that they navigate the world is different. You could live right beside someone. You could be like, well, it only takes them 10 minutes to get to the same place just like me. Yeah, but is their experience getting there the same as yours?
And that's what Diary of Recovering Daughters is about. It's about connecting with other people with mental illness who also may have addiction through their own fault or through being prescribed by the doctor. Let's take a question, Joe, from Facebook.
Oh boy.
Hey, Joe, this is from Nikki Davis. Remember Nikki?
I love Nikki.
You love Nikki. You also directed Nikki in her piece.
Yep.
What was that piece?
Marie Regina, The Life of Mary Stuart, Whitney
Yes.
Scott. Yep.
I've also interviewed Nikki too on Let's Talk Theater. Check her out. This is Nikki's question. Throughout the process, what challenge or question did Joe pose to you that you found most fruitful, either to your writing or to your performance? Good question, Nikki. Well, let's start with the first one. Most fruitful. I think the most fruitful to my writing, let's start with the writing, is the question that he would always ask me. Is this necessary?
I do say that a lot.
Is this necessary to what you're trying to say? Very important question as a writer, because it does help us. As writers, we tend to just write. And it's okay if we're writing a novel. You can just go right on with all that words and everything, or even if you're doing a short story. Because all that descriptive stuff is necessary. But when you're doing a play, it can be a little too much. So for me, the one challenge question in my writing that he always said to me was, is it necessary to what you're trying to say? And if it wasn't, I took it out. Now, as a performer, I don't know, Joe.
I know what I've said to you. Do you want me to repeat it?
I guess you better, because I forgot that. See, and that's another thing that we have to do when we're doing our shows. We have to trying to separate us from writer to the actor.
Yep.
So, what did you say to me, Joe?
So I find that
It's important because our stories need to be heard and told. So many stories about us have been written by Western European people who only write about what they see and think. That people of color and marginalized people think, feel, and do based on their Western European views and thoughts. It is important, which is one of the reasons why I started and founded the Columbus Black Theater Festival. That our children not just see what the Western white European man thinks about them, but they see what actually is them.
Boom.
Drop the mic.
It's true.
All right, Joe, you gonna answer that question again? I gotta tell you what it was.
I mean, I don't know if I should, Julie. I mean, you hit it on the head, right? I mean, like, it's so vitally important that it ties into what I was saying about my daughters, Julie, is that I want them to see everything from every possible perspective. And what's the easiest way to do that? So, Julie, you hit it right on the head. I mean, it's so important to me that we provide opportunities for the community at large to see things through everyone's unique lens. And I think for the longest time, even though there were some people fighting the good fight, so much of what you would see on TV, the majority of it, did not represent the depth and breadth of this communities at large, across the nation. And so that was one of the reasons why I was so inspired by you with what you were creating at the Black Theater Festival. And it really did, it was something I was trying to support externally by saying, yes, we want you to have a home, we want you to produce your pieces at the Columbus Performing Arts Center when I was managing that space. But I recognized that when I had the opportunity to come here and be in Dublin, I no longer had to do it that way. I could actually have it be a part of what was being produced at the Abbey. And it was so important to me that the Abbey was producing stories that showed the depth and breadth of our community. So yeah, I mean, that question is great. It's so important. And it's not something that's the flavor of the month.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that you will see the Abbey Theatre of Dublin shying away from in 9 months. It's a part of the fabric of what the Abbey Theatre is, period. And so I'm just so happy that we get to do this with you and happy to be a part of that.
This question is from the lovely Don Farrow. Why now, entering 2021, is the theme in the forefront of this piece important to choose this moment to share? Good question, Don. The reason this piece is so important right now is because due to the isolation, social distancing, not even being able to see a person smile because their face is covered up with a mask, not working, not knowing if you're going to have a job or if you're going to be able to pay your rent, not knowing what's happening with our country. There has been an increase in mental illness, domestic violence, sexual abuse, drug addiction, suicide, murders. Diary of a Recovering Woman, daughters, not only is about what women have to deal with in regards to keeping emotionally stable amongst all those things, but also what do people who are struggling just to survive with their mental illness, how did they get there? Why are they struggling? And what can the caregiver, the counselor do to help them? Can we help them? So the reason this theme is so important is it's about the recovery that must occur in each of our hearts, our minds, the recovery that we must achieve in this country in order for us to have a stable, healthy mental attitude about life.
The unsung heroes, right? Not all heroes wear capes. Counselors are so vitally important to society, and they're doing work that they're not trying to seek acclaim for. They literally are there to help everyone. They're the Ellis Island of the health industry, and so that was something I really wanted to shine a light on. And something that doesn't get talked about a lot is how, even though you're taught, at least that's what Julie has told me, and I actually have an aunt who's a counselor, that you try your best to leave your work at work, but there are people that haunt you, because your job is there to help them get on the right track, and no one's perfect. And so what I was just intrigued by was the honesty in the piece, which lines up with Julie as a human being. Being so honest, and I mean that in a good way. Being earnest is a compliment as far as I'm concerned, and Julie lives her life earnestly, and I appreciated seeing that attribute in this piece, and that the core of it was she's helped so many people over 30 years, but this is just a smattering of some of the women who, even though she gave her all to them, gave her best to them, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were able to overcome their demons. And I think a lot of people are, because of COVID, having to face their demons right now. And I hope that this can show that they're not alone.
Well, Joe, we done got some good questions so far.
Excellent questions.
All right, let's see what's up.
Okay.
This one is from Jessica Gibson, my acting daughter, who's now a registered nurse out there on the front line. Thank you, Jessica. Which daughter do you relate most to and why? Wow, what a good question. I would say, Jessica, that there's a little bit of every one of them in me. Not so much everything that they experienced, but their feelings about what they experienced as a woman. Zella, I relate to her and all the lost loves she's had in her life. Jackie, I relate to her from all of the times when I was young and still sometimes today, trying to figure out where is God in the mix of everything that's happening. Sarah, the fear that we have sometimes from men that we can't control. From Brittany, the scars from being physically abused, whippings. Valerie, being a child and uncertain about what's happening with the relationship with your parents. Dealing with separation from a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I hope that answered it. I got a little bit of all of them in some way has affected me and made me look at my own life. But I'm not going to tell you too much because, see, you got to see that. All right, Joe, here's another question.
Okay.
Oh, I like this because this is one that I can answer, or even Joe. So I'm going to let Joe answer this one for him. Was there a defining moment in your own life that made you know that you had to do the work you're doing? If so, what was it?
So, Julie, you and I kind of talked about this when you asked me, when I was on, the last time you interviewed me. I talked a little bit about some of the experiences that led me towards wanting to have a life in the theater. But I'm going to expound upon it a little bit more, because it was twofold. I was afraid to admit that this is what I wanted to do, and that's what we talked about. But I'm going to tell you why, when that opportunity presented itself, I jumped at it. So my senior year of high school was the first time that my high school had done a musical in over a decade. And they decided to do a piece called Will Rogers Follies. And it's about the life of Will Rogers. And if you're not familiar with Will Rogers is someone who comes from a family of multiple races. He was predominantly Native American. Well, I have a little bit of Native American. Will Rogers looked at the world differently. He actually wanted to understand everyone, and he recognized everyone's divinity as a human being. And so getting to play that character and getting to understand him, I had to do research about him. And I went, wow, I really kind of see the world the same way he does. And he used that power because he was mixed, he was white passing. And a lot of people see me as white, but I'm not. I'm more than that. And so I saw so many similarities in him and myself. And I saw that I was good at communicating and that I loved taking on the challenge of daily clarity. And so that's what made me decide that. I'm like, wow, this is what I love. This is what he did. He entertained people. He made people look at things differently. And that's what I wanted to do. And I mean, it was so, I was blessed to have that opportunity. And then from that opportunity, a lot of other tremendous opportunities to follow that path came to fruition.
Cool. Me, when I knew that I wanted to do what I'm doing, was when I used to type up my father's works for him. My father was a writer. And I would remember him walking around dictating. And I was 9 years old when I had my first typewriter. Who knows? Who asked for a typewriter at 9 years old? Me. And I never forget, I had a night, it was a portable one. I could carry it with me everywhere I went, and you shut it down. And, in our family, for Christmas, we were allowed to ask for one good thing. One thing. They'd give us whatever else they felt like it, but we could ask for one thing. And I always picked stuff like that. Cameras, typewriters, tape recorders, stuff like that. And I would be typing, and my dad would dictate. And I remember my dad sending out works that he would write articles, short stories. And I remember the rejection letters that would say that he was too radical, that they couldn't print this because it was just plain radical. This is back in the 60s when black men were not really able to talk about what they felt as black men and get it published. But he always did it. He just kept on doing it. And that's when I learned and started learning and that it's important to tell our stories. And no matter how many rejections you may get, tell it. And so that's when I knew, when I was just a kid, listening to my father, talking about his experiences, and typing them out for him. And then, of course, I just started typing and writing my own stories. And it just evolved from that. And me writing my stories and giving them to Daddy, and Daddy critiquing them and saying, What does that mean? I don't understand that. Clarify that. Are you sure that's what you was trying to say? That don't make sense to me. Help me understand. That's when I knew that I was going to be a writer. And I hoped that I was going to be a writer that people read. But if they didn't, I didn't care. I was going to still write it. All right. All right, JoJo.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I probably shouldn't say JoJo.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I think it's
forget,
fine.
that's all like
It's
personal.
fine. It's fine.
Okay.
I think it's okay for us to show that we actually like each other.
Question. This is from Noni Byron Like. My relatives are hitting me hard. What do you do, aside from prayer, to center yourself? What's the most challenging things about what you do? I'm glad she put in aside from prayer because she knows me. So she know I pray a lot. I think one of the most challenging things for me in what I do, number one, I'll answer that one first, is that I have to keep pushing. And I have to understand that the things that I present or my thoughts on things aren't something that everybody wants to hear or see. And that it's important for me to know and understand that, as my daddy taught me when I was young, that I was going to have 3 challenges in this life. First challenge he said I was going to have was that I was a black person. Second challenge he said I was going to have was that I was a woman. And the third challenge my daddy said that I was going to have was that I was a dark-skinned black woman. I have found that to be the most challenging thing. And I say that because I have been doing a private study for years. And there's somebody else working with me on this. We will say the same thing, but she's light-skinned. And people will respond to what she says. And I say the same thing, but I'm dark-skinned. And people don't respond. But I understand that the reason for that is because we have been Western, Europeanized, whiteness through television and movies and books that our children read, that has told us that light, bright, and white is the right. So that's been the most challenging thing for me, is to keep pushing myself out there with that, knowing that I got 3 strikes against me, but understanding that I don't care. It was put in me as a young child to know that. So even though it's a challenge that continually remains, especially now in our climate that we've had of the last 4 years of dehumanizing people who are not of a certain white race, I've just had to keep on pushing. And in regards to, aside from prayer, how do I center myself? Music, writing, sitting outside. Oh God, please spring come, so I can sit outside on my deck just soak in the sun and just look at what God has made and done, and just keep myself focused on that I have beautiful children, wonderful family, and that things are going to change. I might not see it, but things are going to change.
So to center myself, what I like to do is I go on walks. And that's actually something that I started to be more purposeful about once the pandemic hit. So I would make sure that I was going for a minimum of 1 20-minute walk a day. Trying to do it when there's still light out. So it's not only am I going for a walk to clear my head, but I'm also getting some vitamin D. All right. But the most challenging thing for me is that I do think very aspirationally. And so the virtual theater project, that was aspirational. But then understanding that's your strategy, making sure all the tactics line up with that, and still being able to provide purposeful art. Entertaining, but also challenging. And then all the pieces that go into that. And I'm very blessed that I have the city supporting me in doing that, but also driving that, really being the force behind it, and understanding how many different people need to understand the intricacies of that so they can be champions for the art. So when I came to them with your work, I wanted them to understand the reasoning behind it. This wasn't just a diversity and inclusion piece. Oh, no. It had so much more to do with what we've already talked about earlier. The unsung heroes, the people. What does that mean? That means that if you decide, hey, look, I've got some free time between 10 a.m. on January 22nd, guess what you'll be able to do? You'll be able to watch Diary of Recovering Daughters. If you like it so much you want to watch it multiple times, guess what? That's what you get to do. You can stream on demand as much as you want between January 22nd and January 28th for $10. That's it. Very reasonable price. So to make that purchase, there'll be a buy tickets link right underneath the Diary of Recovering Daughters logo. Check out as a guest through the City of Dublin's ticketing mechanism, and then you'll receive an email with your receipt that says, hey, you'll receive an email from Joe Bishara, and then I'll send you the link, whether it's the live stream link or the on-demand link.
Well, guys, you heard it here. My wish is that this piece will shine a light on all of our daughters. If you have a mother, she was a daughter. You have a sister, she's a daughter. Do you have a daughter? Diary of Becoming Daughter is not just for women, it's for men. So I want to thank you, Joe, and the Dublin Abbey Theater for helping me be able to bring this vision that's been with me for, oh God, years now, to life. And I hope and I pray that somebody out there recovers from whatever has caused you to have any kind of mental distress in your life. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Julie.
We're here at Let's Talk Theater on Julie Whitney Scott Presents.